Hello, I'm Brad Wenstrup, and I have the honor of serving as the United States Representative for Ohio's 2nd Congressional District. And I want to start by thanking each of you all for your leadership and for allowing me the chance to speak to you today. Especially on this important issue of health and global health, I guess in particular. As a physician in Congress, ensuring the health of not only our nation, but the health of people across the globe is a priority of mine. And it certainly became more obvious to everyone during things like the AIDS epidemic and COVID. But when it comes to our national health security, global diseases do not necessarily stop at our nation's border, as you all know. America leads the world in health innovation, and it can make us stronger domestically when we can use these medical advances and capabilities for the good abroad. Global health is a form of diplomacy that we can use to help build up nations and form alliances with our healthcare foreign aid. It's important that we do it right. Probably a good example would be HIV/AIDS. You know, I was a resident in Chicago during the HIV/AIDS epidemic, and it was not an easy time for our country. Many were truly scared about what we did not know about the HIV virus. I can remember going in to see a patient and I had to dress like a lunar landing because there was just so much uncertainty. When I saw patients during my residency, I knew that was what they needed most, was to be treated with dignity and respect in this situation. And that goes for all patients, but especially those that are marked with something rare that seem to come with so many negative connotations. But we know that the HIV/AIDS epidemic was not just a United States problem, it was a global issue, affecting communities in developed and undeveloped parts of the globe. At that time, too many patients were being shunned by their communities and unable to find the support and care that they needed. It was unfortunate. We have thankfully come a long way since I was a resident back then. We not only know more about HIV and AIDS, we also know how to better care for those that are afflicted. Incredibly, we also have therapies available now, which we did not have then. While we know that HIV/AIDS has not gone away and is still a global issue, the United States is leading in the global effort to still combat the HIV/AIDS epidemic. And I'm proud of the continued U.S. leadership with PEPFAR. PEPFAR is a program started by President Bush that continues to garner bipartisan support from Congress. It's been transformative in the global health fight. Through PEPFAR support, millions of orphans, vulnerable children, and their caregivers access critical care and supportive services. And since its inception, more than 2.8 million new infections have been averted in children. Let me give you an example of a biotech CEO that I think is a great example for all of us. This incredible biotech CEO is doing work to expand patient access to treatments for rare diseases. He became a biotech entrepreneur to find a cure for his 2 children living with a rare disease, Pompe's disease. He comes at these issues from a unique perspective, having experienced the healthcare system firsthand as an entrepreneur and as a father. His company, Amicus Therapeutics, was named after the Latin word for friend, because in his mind, patients are just that, and they are at the heart of the mission. He has called for payers to lower barriers to patient access. He also offers rare disease therapies at a reduced cost for many underserved communities that can't afford it. Well, let's talk about innovation and why it's so important. When we innovate, we create new therapies, like the one my friend John is able to offer at a reduced cost or no cost to patients across the globe. These wouldn't exist without a system that rewards innovation in some way. It just can't happen. We can't improve global health without innovation, but behind every therapy or cure, there are hundreds of failures. Usually companies have a portfolio of ideas and drugs that they want to try to produce and get all the way through trials and actually out there working for patients. But it's not always easy. I can think of some of the reconstructive foot surgeries that I used to perform for patients with rheumatoid arthritis. They would need drastic procedures to be able to get them to even wear a shoe again because there was so much destruction to the joints of their feet. Now, the need for these surgeries went away as new therapeutics came along, when the joints were being preserved with biologics. But I can remember patients being on one medication that helped for a while, and then another one that helped for a while, and then it no longer did. But we've seen good results with the biologics. So it takes a while to get to these and get them to market. And often they are costly, and hopefully the price can come down over time when we get to generics and biosimilars. But we certainly want that innovation to continue. I think of other cures, such as the cure for hepatitis C. This helps patients avoid years of palliative care, possible liver transplant, numerous hospitalizations. So some of that cost up front is certainly saved on the other end when all of those things are avoided. But it's always hard to evaluate what you prevented. And sometimes that doesn't get all the glory as much as taking care of something. You know, I often refer to the notion of the open heart surgeon. You do an open heart surgery on a patient, you bring them back to life basically. You have saved their life and you kept them from near death. That's an amazing thing. Do we really pay that much attention to the doctor who took care of the patient every step of the way to try and make sure that they never needed that open heart surgery? So I want to gear more towards how we can keep people healthier longer, not just have cures when we need it, but try and maintain health, not only in the United States, but around the world. But think about what innovation means for patients in the U.S. and across the globe who have so many barriers to access to what is actually going on and what is available. Expensive, long-term care, that we can make some real headway in these areas. When we invest in innovation and cures on the front end, we're also investing in patients' quality of life on the back end. So these are the kinds of innovations that don't just improve a person's lifespan, they actually improve their health span. And that's something that I'm particularly focused on injecting into our policies. When I think about COVID-19 and vaccinations, as a co-chair of the Doctors Caucus in the House of Representatives, I was very actively engaged with the whole process for Operation Warp Speed, what the team was doing, how the vaccines were being produced, how they were being tried. You know, normally you have 8,000 to 10,000 people in a trial. These had 40,000 to 50,000 people, and I want to credit those people that got into trials. But you know, we were able to develop a vaccine very quickly. You know, I've been fortunate as a physician to go out into my community, into the district that I represent, and help vaccinate my constituents. And I've been very pro-vaccine. I've also been working with our Doctors Caucus to understand why some Americans are hesitant to receive a vaccine, to hear them out, and to share a medical opinion with them about the safety and efficacy of these vaccines. We've come so far and done what so many said was impossible, but the bottom line is, I think everyone needs to talk to their doctor and do what's best for their medical care. So my desire to get everyone vaccinated includes the rest of the world. It's a humanitarian imperative to help countries around the world get access to the vaccine. You know, the U.S. has donated significant resources through COVAX to deliver vaccines to vulnerable communities. We're hearing more and more about vaccine diplomacy. And when you look at past programs like PEPFAR or current programs like COVAX, we have clear examples that vaccine diplomacy is good for both our own national health security and for global health at large. The concern about our ability to vaccinate communities through the world is real to me. And I absolutely agree that we must redouble our efforts towards achieving this shared goal. As we move forward, though, I think it's important to know that even during the trial process, we know that people that were vaccinated still were able to develop COVID and take on COVID. They usually did not get as sick, and they were less likely to be hospitalized or die. We also know that viruses produce variants. So I hope to see that we continue to work for therapeutics that work to help people get better when they do get COVID. I think the vaccine is important, but I think it's also important that we have treatments readily available like monoclonal antibodies and other treatments that can get people through the symptoms and not let them lose their life. So in this past May, the Biden administration announced its support for the concept of a waiver of parts of the World Trade Organization's agreement on trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights, or the TRIPS waiver. Unfortunately, I'm concerned that the proposed waiver of intellectual property rights for COVID-19 vaccines is the wrong approach. As we work toward the shared goal of getting ample supplies of safe and effective vaccines to people in every country as quickly as possible, a waiver of IP protections would probably do more harm than good, especially in the long term. Vaccine manufacturers around the world have created complex, tightly coordinated supply chains. Pfizer, for example, has noted that their vaccine utilizes 280 different materials supplied from 19 different countries. An IP waiver could severely disrupt those supply chains as new, unlicensed producers consume scarce inputs. I'm also concerned that these unlicensed producers may not be able to replicate the same safety and quality that we see in the currently approved vaccines. So if these new unlicensed producers have problems, it could undermine confidence in the vaccine itself and contribute to the already significant problem of vaccine hesitancy. So there's much to discuss. There's always work for us to do. The COVID-19 pandemic represents an opportunity for the global community. More people are paying attention to their health and the health of their communities than ever before. The United States innovates and leads around the world. Also critical to our own success is our partnerships with our allies. Look at our COVID-19 vaccines. They represent global partnerships like Pfizer and BioNTech. We should continue to use innovation in the U.S. and abroad to address healthcare disparities across the globe. Again, much work to be done. I'm so grateful that you are taking the time to address all these issues, and I look forward to working with you now and in the future. God bless.